Hello and welcome to another episode of Seven Story Podcast. I'm Natasha Kyler and I'm here with today's featured author, Veronica Leigh. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I've been writing off and on since I was a kid. Um, I've always been interested in books and literature. I finally, about 10 years ago, finally started to get some short pieces published. And then last year, I got two different book deals. So that was exciting.
That's super exciting. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got those book deals?
Well, I actually just kind of submitted it to the companies themselves. For a number of years, I tried to get an agent, and it just didn't work out. Every attempt just failed. So I thought, well, the independent publishers are sort of on the rise now. They don't always require agents. So I just submitted, and they accepted.
Nice. And you said you just started really publishing your work. So, what kind of work have you published so far?
Well, I've published a lot of short pieces so far, like inspirational essays, some short mystery crime fiction, um, other short historical fiction pieces, and just kind of kept that up until I'm still doing it actually.
Are those like your top genres to write?
Yeah, the crime mystery is. I hadn't originally done that, but I just kind of just started dabbling in other fiction because what I was trying to do, what I was trying to write in, wasn't working out.
And today you said you wanted to talk about a upcoming book.
Yeah, it is. I'm going to just call it The Judgment of Solomon because I don't have the new title of what it'll be called when it is published, but it should. I was told it'll be released early June. It's based in Poland during the Holocaust and post-war Poland too, and it's about a woman who she kind of opens her door and finds a baby on her doorstep, and she takes it in, and she eventually figures out the baby's Jewish, and she has this chance to do something.
And what inspired you to write that story?
History mostly, because that sort of happened. Not necessarily that they found babies on doorsteps, but sometimes children would be placed with Christian families, and they to save their lives, and the Jewish parents would, I think, try to, in a way, get the children back after the war. I think they were thinking it was just going to be temporary, and that's what they had planned. But the Christian families didn't always want to give the children back, so that's kind of what the basis was for the story.
It's very interesting. And why do you feel connected to this that you wanted to write a story about that?
I'm not sure I can explain a connection for this because I know for some years I thought my family and I had some Jewish heritage.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of had like whispers in the family of maybe this relative was Jewish or that relative. But then we did the ancestry DNA test, and there was no connection, no Jewish heritage whatsoever. So I think it's just I read the Diary of Anne Frank when I was about 11 or 12, and it just always kind of intrigued me, that part of history.
That's very cool. It's very cool. Are there any characters that are specifically personal to you?
Well, there is a character in there in the story. Her name's Eva. She shows up a little later in the story. She was sort of inspired, or I named her after Eva Moses Core, and she was a local Holocaust survivor in my hometown of Terre Haute, and I was able to go on one of her tours, and so I thought, well, I'm going to name a character after her. So that character's special.
And speaking of characters, like, how did you come up with them? Are they spontaneous or are they meticulously planned? Walk me through that process a little bit.
Well, again, I sort of looked to history on, how the people that lived back then, how they lived. So I do try to plan out the characters, but it's like as the story takes on a life of its own, so do the characters. They just sort of develop their own histories and their own personalities separate from what I plan. And that goes with any story.
Mm-hmm. What do you hope readers will take away from this book?
Well, I hope they enjoy it. I hope it encourages them to look back in history and study that period, and hope to high heavens that we can avoid something like that again. That's, my hope, I guess. There are plenty of books out there that are great to read along, are probably even preferable to what I've written, something like The Diary of Anne Frank, or, Eva Moses Corr's book,
And I had a question, I lost it. How long did it take you to write this?
Well, I started in 2016, and I would work on it off and on for a number of years. And then around 2020, I just kind of gave up and thought, it's just going to be one of those projects that fails. And then around 2023, I sort of picked it up again and did a major revision overhaul draft and revised it a few more times after that and started submitting it. And finally it was accepted. So it was probably 5 steady years of work and 3 steady years of neglect.
And what was that like, the time period where you kind of just walked away from it?
Well, I would think about it from time to time, but I thought, maybe this just tell the story. So I'd think about it and find a home for it, but I just thought maybe I should and try something else, and just came back to it.
Do you see yourself writing a similar book anytime in the future?
My connection wonk.
Can you hear me?
I can hear it.
Okay, you're going in and out on my side. My question was, do you see yourself writing? Yeah. Okay. You still with me?
Sorry, I missed that again. Yeah, sorry, okay. I missed the question again.
Yeah, my question was, do you see yourself writing another historical piece soon?
I would like to, go back and write another historical novel. I don't know if I'd go back to this period because I wouldn't want to copy too much of what I've already done. Probably I'd like to probably write it maybe in the Victorian era or something like that.
And what intrigues you about the Victorian era?
It was such a there's so much that happened during the Victorian era. We have the Civil War, we have the Industrial Revolution, we have women's rights starting to, they were happening even before the Victorian era, but the women, I'm trying to think, what was that conference they went to? It was in 1848, I think. Anyway, maybe it was Seneca Falls. They had like a women's conference and they were discussing suffrage even back then. And it was just such a period that it just so much change, sometimes for the better and for the worse. But
I know you said you recommend The Diary of Anne Frank. What other book recommendations might you have for somebody who wants to start out in the historical fiction kind of genre?
For question a little bit.
What did you say?
I'm sorry, I missed the question.
I said that I know you recommended and The Diary of Anne Frank, and I was just wondering what other recommendations might you have for someone who wants to start reading in the more historical fiction, historical nonfiction genres.
Well, I mentioned Eva Cole's book Echoes is really good. I'm trying to think. Nonfiction book. The Diary of Mary Berg, that was a good one. I'm drawing a blank. I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank on some other history. Yeah. For nonfiction, I've read quite a few, but yeah, my mind just went blank there.
As well. That's
fiction. It's classic. Margaret Atwood's read. I like work. I'm going to pronounce her name wrong. Isabel Allende, or she wrote it. That was enjoyed her work.
Shifting more into your experience as a writer, what does a typical day look like for you?
Regular day. Wake up. I go to work first, and then I actually come back after work and do some writing, and then go to bed. Just like an ordinary, boring routine. That's usually what it looks like. Nothing super exciting.
Do you have a dedicated time for your writing, or is it whenever you get to it?
I try maybe early afternoon or mid-afternoon, but sometimes it is just whenever I get to it, in between appointments or in between shifts,
Mm-hmm. And when you write, do you prefer pen and paper, or is it digitally, or whatever is easiest available?
I usually start out pen to paper. Then I do kind of like go on to taking whatever notes I have and outlines I put it on the computer. Sometimes I do write out some things on my phone and send it to myself to try to save it for later.
Yeah. What were you about to say?
I was just going to say I've been at work and on my phone and then send it to myself.
Yep. When inspiration strikes, got to just get it out real quick before you forget. What's your process for completing a project from idea to outline to final product? Like, walk me through that.
Well, I usually try to start with notes and then an outline on paper, and then I try to put it on the computer, and if I'm really diligent, I can get a first draft done in 3 or 4 months. But like one of my current projects, I've been working on it since last August. It's been like pulling wisdom teeth to get the words down. And then after that first draft is done, I'd probably revise 3 or 4 times after that, until it sort of looks like a novel.
And when it is difficult, when you are getting that friction and that resistance during your writing process, how do you go about resolving that?
For this project that I'm working on that have been having issues with, I guess I just sort of let some weeks pass before I try to resume my work on it. I don't try to really force it. I probably should, but there's always something else I can be writing on or trying to edit or revise. So I just kind of abandon it and come back, until like I said, until I can finally get the first draft out.
And how many projects are you typically juggling at once?
Let's see. Well, I got one. Like I said, I'm working on the one novel that I'm struggling with. I'm working on an outline for another one that is set in the Victorian era, in the 1880s. And let's see, and then I'm always having a short story going. So it's just probably 2 or 3 projects. The third one usually a really short, small piece.
And does your process for writing a short story differ from a novel?
No, I kind of do the thing with the notes and the outline still with a short story. It just like, and then I, put it on the computer. It's really rare that I don't plan or that I try to write from the seat of my pants, because like I said, but I try to plot, even like I try to plan my characters, but they do take on a life of their own.
Excuse me. And where do you typically publish your short stories?
With crime magazines and mystery magazines. I've had a lot of luck publishing with Black Cat Weekly. Mystery magazine is closed down, but I did publish a couple with them. I published one with Hoosier Noir. I keep trying for Ellery Queen, but they keep rejecting me. So, I mean, you know how that is.
I do. Yeah. Just got a rejection email, yesterday.
Oh, sorry.
It's part of the process.
Yeah.
How do you, how do you not hold on to that feeling? Like, how do you find the motivation to keep going and keep submitting even after you get those rejections?
For years, in the wrong genres, I didn't know any better. I just kind of stupidly kept submitting, even though I kept getting all these rejections kept pouring in. And then finally, you start collecting these editors' comments, and some of them can be nice, they're constructive, and you just kind of, I think subconsciously you just sort of take it to heart, and you just kind of press on. I mean, if you want it enough, you just, I guess, collect all the rejection slips and paper your house or a room. And, just think that there'll be someone who will publish you.
And when you do submit for your short stories, is that like a open call for submissions, or how do you typically find that?
It can be open call for submissions. I try to follow closely on Threads or Twitter or within the mystery community. Places like Ellery Queen or Black Hat Weekly or Sherlock Holmes Mystery Magazine, they're open periodically.
Mm-hmm.
So you just have to check their websites to see if they're open. So I just either send it by email or through their whatever portal they have.
Do you have a system that keeps you organized?
Yeah, but it probably doesn't keep me super organized, because I've actually submitted the same story twice before, forgetting that I had submitted at an earlier period, and kind of got a rejection twice. So I guess my system's not very good, but yeah, I usually got it on a word pad or a notepad or something when I've submitted, and the rejection.
Hopefully more acceptances.
Probably not. I don't think of all the rejections I've got, I doubt I'll have that many acceptances.
Well, hopefully more soon.
Thank you.
What is your favorite thing about being a writer?
Probably seeing that story in print, thinking like, okay, I worked on this and here it is, and it's in a publication. It's a nice feeling. I know that's the best part. The rejections are probably the roughest, but it's part of like you said, part of the business.
Right. And since you said rejections are probably the roughest, what is something that just drives you up a wall? Like, you can't stand it. It's the absolute worst thing.
Regarding rejections,
Or no, just in general of the writing process or being a writer?
Usually when I think I got all the typos and the grammatical errors, and then, I'm submitting and maybe I happen to look at the document again, or I'm even looking at the query letter and I see like, uh-oh, there's a misspelling right in the query letter. I've done that more than once. That's embarrassing. I kind of want to brain myself because you're trying to be professional and then, you look kind of silly.
I understand. I self-published my first poetry book, and I did not notice until probably months after it was published. There was a typo in the last poem, and I was like, "Oh, this word isn't here twice." Okay, nobody noticed this. Okay.
Well, were you able to fix it, or how did you?
Yeah, I did end up fixing it, but there's definitely a nice amount of copies out there floating around.
Well, it's a special edition.
I want to ask you my favorite question, which is, what is the most unhinged thing you've written in one of your pieces? I promise that this is a safe space, and we aren't judging.
Well, earlier we mentioned you wondered if I had like a connection or something to writing about the Holocaust. So it's probably a little unhinged for me to write about that period since I don't have a personal connection. And if I were writing that, nowadays, I probably wouldn't write that story because I don't have a connection. So I'm hoping and praying I got everything correct and that it's respectful. It's not hurtful in any way, or so the history is all correct, nothing's inaccurate.
Do you have like any fears around that, around like it being incorrect or anything, or do you think
yeah, a lot of fears. The last thing I want to do is hurt anyone. I always want to be respectful. I mean, no matter what topic I'm writing about, but that one is a very dark time in history. So I never want to do it in a lighthearted manner or, again, be disrespectful to another culture, another people.
Yeah, that's very important. And I think that whenever there is an author who writes about something that they aren't a part of and they don't have that experience, the main important thing is that it doesn't come from a place of malintent, and that they do the research ahead of time, and they thoughtfully craft the story and the characters to be more accurate. So I think based off how you've described everything, like you did the work, you have a strong respect for the history and a deep understanding of what transpired. And so I think you'll be fine.
Well, thank you.
What does success look like for you as a writer?
Being able to tell a good story and hopefully people enjoying it when they read it. I mean, I do like to see things in print, but it probably makes me happier to hear that a reader enjoys whatever I've written.
And a follow-up to that is, what type of life do you want to live as a writer? Like, would you want to write full time?
I would love that. I mean, it's definitely a dream. I'm not sure if it's achievable or not. I know I mentioned, I think, Margaret Atwood earlier, and it took her years to be able to live solely by writing. I know she said she had a variety of different jobs. Mm-hmm. So it's just, we'll see what happens.
Are there any other genres that you would be interested in writing?
I'd like to write, I guess, in a dystopian, maybe. Mm-hmm. But those are so complicated, and there's so many dystopians out there. And I would feel like I'm copying already what's already out there. I wouldn't want to do a mediocre copy of 1984 when it's already there.
Right. Yeah, dystopians are definitely hard to craft.
Yeah.
You said there's a bunch out there, and I agree, but there's always something different that you can do. Everyone has their own story that they can tell.
That's true.
So I think you should go for it if you have interest in it. And I'd be very interested in seeing how your experience. Sorry, my dog is whining.
Okay. Hi, doggy.
How your experience with researching the Holocaust and the Victorian era, how those things might show up in terms of what a dystopian piece would look like. Because yeah.
Well, maybe one day I can. I don't know. We'll see.
Something to keep in your back pocket.
Yeah.
We only have a few minutes left, so I want to take this time to give you the floor and remind everyone when your book should be coming out and talk about any upcoming projects that you may want to share.
Okay. Well, Read More Press had let me know that it should be out maybe early June. I'm just kind of calling it The Judgment of Solomon right now because they let me know they're going to give it a new title, but they haven't told me what it was yet. See when it should be available on Amazon and maybe through the Read More Press website. When it comes to future projects, I do have a book coming out in August of 2026. It's called Eye for an Eye. It's a historical crime novel set in the 1930s, featuring a female sheriff who inherited her position when her husband passed away. There was a practice back then called widow's succession, and widows of sheriffs were often offered their husband's position to to be able to provide for themselves during the 20s and the 30s and the 40s. So my heroine solved a bunch of crimes in a small town.
Oh, I never heard of that. So that's very interesting. I'm looking forward to reading that.
Thank you.
And what are your social medias so people can find you?
My main website is veronicaleeauthor.wordpress.com. My Twitter is, I think it is VL Author. And my Instagram is Veronica Leigh Author.
Okay. Well, that's it for this episode of 7 Story Podcast. Thank you, Veronica Leigh, for joining us and sharing your story and telling us about your projects. Stay up to date with Veronica Leigh on her socials, like she mentioned. Until next time, I'm Natasha from 7 Story Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here.